Hello children, welcome back to the part 2 video of Russian Revolution. In the part 1 video, we stopped with the February Revolution. In this video, we are going to see what all changes that took place in Russia after the February Revolution. The subtopics of this video are the changes that took place in Russia after the February Revolution, the reasons for the October Revolution, the Civil War, Stalin and collectivization, and the impact of Russian Revolution to the world and also to India. Children, in my previous video, that is end of February Revolution, we saw that the Tsar escaped out of Russia. So the rule of Russia came into the hands of the Duma leaders. The Duma leaders formed a provisional government and also decided to have a constitution assembly elected on the base of universal adult franchise. Most of the people in Russia welcomed this move. Army officials, landlords and industrialists were influential in the provisional government. Liberals and the socialists worked together to form an elected government. Restrictions on public meetings and associations were removed. In April 1917, the Bolshevik leader Lenin returned back to Russia from exile. He introduced the April thesis. What is April thesis? Well, it has got 3 points, children. 1. According to April thesis, Lenin declared the war to be brought to an end. He wanted the lands to be transferred to the peasants. And lastly, he wanted the banks to be nationalized. He also argued that the Bolshevik Party should be renamed as the Communist Party. Many of the members of the Bolshevik Party did not agree with Lenin's viewpoint. They thought that the time is not ripe for a socialist revolution and they should support the provisional government. But slowly, this opinion changed. Trade union grew up in numbers. Soldiers' committee was formed in the army. Slowly, the provisional government started losing control and the Bolsheviks started gaining control. This made the provisional rulers very unhappy and they decided to take stern measures. They resisted attempts by the workers to run the factory and began arresting them. Meanwhile, in the countryside, the peasants and the socialist revolutionary leaders started redistributing their land. Land committees were formed to handle this. Encouraged by the socialist revolutionaries, peasants decided to take land between July and September 1917. Like I told you in the previous slide, children, the provisional government started losing control and the Bolsheviks started gaining control. So this automatically led to a big fight or a big conflict between the provisional government and the Bolsheviks. Lenin feared that the provisional government will set up a dictatorship. He felt the time had come for him to take control of Russia. So, on October 16, 1917, Lenin decided to take control of Russia. A military revolutionary committee was appointed by the Soviet under Leo Trotsky. The uprising began on 24th October. Prime Minister Kerensky left the city. Military men loyal to the government attacked the 2 Bolshevik newspaper offices. They also caught control of the telephone and telegraphic offices. In return, the Military Revolutionary Committee ordered the supporters to attack the government offices and arrest all the ministers. Later in the day, the ship Aurora shelled the Winter Palace. Other ships sailed down to River Neva and took control of various military points. By midnight, major part of the city was under the control of the Bolsheviks. Heavy fighting took place between the Bolsheviks and the people who supported the king. But by the end of December, Bolsheviks got the full control of the Moscow-Petrograd area. Children, let's have a look what happened to Russia after the October Revolution. Number one, the Bolsheviks were totally opposed to private property. Banks and industries were nationalized. Land was considered as a social property and the peasants were allowed to take their lands back from the nobles. In cities, Bolsheviks enforced the partition of large houses according to the family requirement. They banned the use of old titles of aristocrat. The Bolshevik Party was renamed as the Russian Communist Party. In November 1917, the Bolsheviks conducted election to the Constituent Assembly, but they failed to gain majority and Lenin later dismissed the assembly. The Bolshevik Party became the one and only party in Russia which could conduct the election. While on one hand, many people supported the Bolsheviks as they stood for socialism, on the other hand, people were so unhappy with the party because of the laws enforced, especially the censorship law. When the Bolsheviks decided to redistribute the land, the Russian army began to break down. Soldiers, who were mostly peasants, wanted to go back to the village and lead a normal life. Non-Bolsheviks, socialists, liberals, and the supporters of Tsar condemned the uprising of the Bolshevik party. Their leaders moved to South Russia and organized troops to attack the Bolsheviks. During 1918 and 1919, most of the parts of Russia was under the control of the socialist revolutionaries and the pro-Tsars. But after January 1920, the Bolsheviks started gaining control in many parts of the Russian Empire. They succeeded this with the cooperation of the non-Russian nationalists and the Muslim jihadis. By 1922, the birth of Soviet Union or USSR took place. Stalin and his idea of collectivization. Children, as you know, in the year 1927 and 1928, Russia was facing a crisis of acute shortage of grains. The peasants refused to sell their grains to the government on the price fixed by the government. That is when Stalin took over the control of Russia after the death of Lenin. Stalin decided to visit the village and raid rich persons known as kulaks. They decided to take control of all the small lands in the village and make them into a big, large land. All the farmers were asked to work in that land collectively, using the tools which was found in that farm. The profit which is earned from that farm was to be shared equally among all cultivators. Many peasants resisted the policy of cultivation. They were severely punished by the state. Some of them was even deported and exiled. Stalin allowed some independent cultivation, but treated such cultivators very unsympathetically. In spite of collectivization, production did not increase immediately. In fact, the bad harvest of 1930 to 1933 led to one of the most devastating famines in Soviet history, where 4 million people died. Children, now we come to the last subtopic of this chapter, Russian Revolution and the world. Children, do you know that many people across the world criticized the capture of power in Russia by the Bolshevik, but the workers throughout the world supported them. The Bolsheviks encouraged colonial people to follow their experiment. Many non-Russians from outside the USSR participated in the Conference of People of the East, and the Bolsheviks founded Comintern. Some received education in the USSR Communist University of the Workers of the East. By the time of the outburst of the Second World War, the USSR had given socialism a global face and a world status. Well, children, we have come to the end of this chapter. I hope all the concepts are very crystal clear and Russian Revolution has become much easier for you to learn. I will be back again with another new chapter in history. Till then, take care and have a safe day.